and welcome to APTN National News Weekend Edition. I'm Rick Harp. On Thursday, we brought you the tragic story of a young woman whose frozen body was found near a Winnipeg back lane. Now the mother of Wendy Sinclair says she is mourning the loss of two family members, her daughter and her unborn grandchild. Hospital officials recently told the family that Sinclair was 2 months pregnant at the time of her death. And as Brittany Hobson reports, the news has only added to the family's questions.
It's been more than a week since the body of 29-year-old Wendy Sinclair was found frozen near this Winnipeg back lane. While the family has been searching for answers surrounding Wendy's death, they were hit with some more devastating news. The mother of four was 2 months pregnant at the time of her death. Eleanor Sinclair met with hospital officials Thursday evening when she heard about her daughter's pregnancy for the first time.
I just lost it. I didn't even know how to process that. Because now not only my daughter and now my grandchild.
On December 25th, Wendy was transported to a Winnipeg hospital after she began experiencing symptoms related to an overdose. She'd been struggling with a crystal meth addiction and had used that evening. The family was told she would be treated and sent back home in a taxicab, but she never made it home. 2 days later, Eleanor found out her daughter had been treated but left the hospital without notifying staff. Her body was found on the 28th. Eleanor questions how her daughter was able to leave without anyone noticing, and whether anything else could have been done to help her.
And they should have steps or procedures in place that should enable them to keep this person in the hospital. Especially when they know she's impaired, her judgment is impaired.
According to the Winnipeg Regional Health Authority, staff cannot hold a patient against their will, but there are protocols put into place when a patient leaves without notifying staff. They say an internal investigation is underway to determine whether these protocols were followed. When a patient leaves before care is complete without informing staff, a code yellow may be called and a procedure undertaken to search for the individual. Our internal review will include an investigation to determine if a code yellow was called in this case. After Thursday's meeting, the family says they are left with more questions than answers. The family says they still don't know the cause of Wendy's death, and they haven't heard anything from the coroner's office. A spokesperson for the office told APTN that it could take until spring to receive autopsy results. In the meantime, the family still hasn't been able to see Wendy's body. The family is meeting with hospital officials for a follow-up on Friday. Brittany Hobson, APTN National News, Winnipeg.
To British Columbia now, where protesters are now banned from 4 fish farms. Handed down in late 2017, the decision by the province's Supreme Court ruled in favor of 2 fish farm operators who sought to remove activists from their facilities. But as Lori Hamelin explains, those activists seem unfazed.
Melina Dawson has been occupying this fish farm off the coast of Vancouver Island since September. Now, her and other activists can't come here anymore because they've lost their legal battle against 2 BC fish farm owners. The province's highest court has granted Marine Harvest Canada and Cermak Canada injunctions at 4 different salmon farms in BC's coastal waters. This means the protesters must stay away or face being arrested. But Dawson says injunctions won't stop them.
We're going to continue being out in the water in our territory so we can see what these farms are doing and keep an eye on them regardless of the injunctions. Even the sites that have been granted injunctions, we can still be watching them. We just can't go in a certain perimeter.
Although the judge's verdict is a victory for the fish farm industry, activists who are fighting the farms think they could be winning when it comes to gaining attention from BC's newly elected NDP government. And it's the provincial government that has the power to pull the fish farm licenses, which are up for renewal this summer. In the last few months, Premier John Horgan committed to protecting wild salmon at a meeting with First Nations. He appointed his top deputy to investigate the integrity of BC's Animal Health Centre after allegations of a conflict of interest were made by a federal scientist. And the province is now reviewing regulations covering fish processing plants after seeing this footage of bloody effluent. Chief Bob Chamberlain says the provincial government will be meeting with them this month.
We now have a date penciled in with the provincial government for January 30th. And then we'll get our initial official response from the provincial government. And from there, we're going to be advancing a government-to-government negotiations on this.
Lori Hamlin, APTN National News, Vancouver.
This week saw new honors bestowed by Canada's Governor General, the latest appointments to the Order of Canada. Newly joining the order are 125 men and women recognized for their contributions to Canadian society. Among them, Indigenous women's advocate Jeanette Corbière-Lavelle. APTN's Brittany Hobson brings us this report.
Jeanette Corbière-Lavalle's decades-long career has taken her all across Canada and even internationally. The women's advocate is most well known for challenging the Indian Act after she married a non-Indigenous man. She's now being honored for her work as one of the latest recipients of the Order of Canada.
I received a call just out of the blue from the Governor General's office. No prior warning, no little rumors or anything. I had no idea that this was coming.
She joins a long list of 125 new appointees, which was announced in December. She says the latest recognition is a reflection of the ongoing role Indigenous women play when it comes to advancing Indigenous rights.
We have many women, young and older, who are doing amazing amounts of work at the community level, either in health, education, or just looking at our rights within the Indian Act and human rights.
The Governor General's office says Corbière-Laval is being recognized for advocating for Indigenous women's rights throughout Canada. In 1971, she lost her Indian status because she married David Laval, a non-Indigenous man. Deeming the Indian Act discriminatory against women, she decided to challenge the rule. In 1973, the challenge went to the Supreme Court, where she lost.
Technically, we didn't win in 1973 at the Supreme Court, but nonetheless, it opened up all this big discussion and the controversy, good and bad controversy.
An exhibit outlining Corbière-Laval's fight is on display at the Canadian Museum for Human Rights in Winnipeg. In November, she visited it for the first time and reflected on the ongoing issues with the Indian Act, including Bill C-31.
The Indian Act's there just trying to obliterate any kind of rights that we have, and it's still ongoing in terms of our land and other aspects of our life.
More than a dozen Indigenous people were appointed to the Order of Canada, including Fred Saskamoose, who was the first Indigenous player in the NHL, and Fisher River Cree Nation Chief David Crate for improving access to technology in Manitoba First Nations. Brittany Hobson, APTN National News, Winnipeg.
And we'd like to hear what you have to say about this or any other story you see in the broadcast. Here's how to get in touch. You can send an email to news@aptn.ca, like our APTN National News Facebook page. Follow us on Twitter at APTN News, or go to our website, aptnnews.ca. Senator Lynn Beck has been kicked out of the Conservative caucus for refusing to remove controversial content from her website. Beck has come under frequent criticism for her ongoing assertions that, quote, some good came out of Canada's residential schools. Her website has featured some 100 letters of support for that position. For example, this one. I'm no anthropologist, but it seems every opportunistic culture, subsistence, hunter-gatherers, seeks to get what they can for no effort. There's always a clash between industrial, organized farming culture that values effort as opposed to a culture that will sit and wait until the government gives them stuff. Time for a break. When we return, how one Siksika man overcame multiple sources of adversity to realize his lifelong dream of cultural revitalization. Stay with us. Welcome back. Well, for one Siksika man in Alberta, realizing his dream of a culturally based lodge has not been without its share of obstacles, both environmental and personal. But as Tamara Pimentel reports, Dion Redgun is not one to stand down from a challenge.
On a hill overlooking the Bow River Valley on Siksika Nation sits River Ranch Tourism Lodge, a lifelong dream of 56-year-old Dion Redgun. The lodge gives him a place to preserve his culture and share stories about the land River Ranch overlooks.
Without the languages, who are we? Without the lands, who are we? Without the stories, who are we? So I'm hoping that in my limited role that I could make a positive impact with the stories that will follow.
The lodge has been Redgun's dream since the 1990s, and it's been a long struggle to get to this point. River Ranch was originally built on an island on the Bow River. Tourists flock there to kayak and fish.
We had a solar-powered facility, lodge, cabins, rustic, right off the grid. Awesome place to be. And we were booked solid. From 2012 was our banner year. 2013, we were booked solid for 2013 and 2014. But unfortunately, nature had other plans for us.
What nature had in store was the devastating flood of 2013. That caused hundreds on Siksika to lose their homes, and Redgun to lose River Ranch. While dealing with the loss of his business, Redgun was learning how to walk again. He suffered with severe arthritis, confining him to a wheelchair.
It was pretty dramatic and devastating because it's not easy dealing with a chronic condition and then overburdening family, and it was a challenge for family too, stressful.
All of this while focusing on finishing his business degree. He says the encouragement of his family helped him move on.
Looking at my grandchildren, they were all just young, some of them just starting to learn to walk, encouraged me to walk with them, so that really gave me strength.
Now, with the help of business partners, family, and Mount Royal University School of Business, River Ranch is rebuilt. The university heard of Redgun's story and used his business as a class project to help with the business plan. The brand new lodge has only been up for a few months and has already had international visitors from Europe, Asia, and the U.S.
Every step I take is a step in a positive direction today. I don't waste my time. I don't waste my legs. Get up and do what I have to do to stay with the game, especially as an Indigenous person.
Tamara Pimentel, APTN National News, Siksika Nation.
All toy bears are special to someone, kids most of all. But in this next story, you'll hear about a bear that's also proven to be a symbol of hope for many First Nations children. APTN's Annette Francis explains.
To have
Meet Spirit Bear.
He is the only one of his type to have a degree in Canada.
He's also got his own Twitter feed and is the subject of a newly published book. This cuddly little bear has been the sidekick of child welfare advocate Cindy Blackstock for the past 10 years. The bear was gifted to her when hearings began at the Canadian Human Rights Tribunal here in Ottawa.
I really wanted something in that room that reminded all of us about what this case was actually about, which was children. And so I began bringing the bear to all the hearings.
According to Blackstock, over time, Spirit Bear began to garner attention from children and adults. He started getting trinkets and gifts, and eventually his own story started to unfold during the course of the hearings. So it just made sense to create a book entitled Spirit Bear and Children Make History.
I tell him a little bit about Spirit Bear, about where he's from, and what language he speaks in his First Nations language. And then we go on from that to talk about the case, how he came to witness it.
The book is geared for kids from grades 2 to 6, but Blackstock says since its release last month, it's been a hit.
The reaction has been extremely positive, not only from children and young people and their families who are reading this together about how children have and continue to make a difference on the TRC's calls to action, but from university students and university professors who look at this almost as a textbook. because there's so few cases, legal cases, where children have not just been the subjects of the law, they've been participants in the law and participants in justice and reconciliation. And this tells a story of it in a way that children and adults can understand.
Blackstock says it's a great way to help educate.
You know, children really are the great hope of reconciliation. If we can raise a generation of non-Indigenous children who know about these inequalities, who don't accept these inequalities or rationalize these inequalities, that creates a better ground for those inequalities to end for First Nations kids and for them never to grow again for any other group of children.
Anyone interested in purchasing the book can email info@fncarengsociety.com. All proceeds will go to children's reconciliation projects. Annette Francis, APTN National News, Ottawa.
Time for a quick break. When we return, how a Mi'kmaq artist has inked his way to new cultural connections. Please stay with us. Thanks for staying with APTN National News Weekend. A Mi'kmaq artist in Newfoundland is reviving a largely forgotten tradition. In the process, he's helping others explore and express their identity. APTN's Justin Brake has more.
If you had asked me 2 years ago if I'd be tattooing today, I would have said, I don't think so.
An artist, actor, filmmaker, and powwow dancer, Jerry Evans also breathes life into the revival of traditional Indigenous tattoos.
I mean, there's only two visual documents, visual documentations of our people's tradition of body tattooing.
Since the mid-1980s, Evans has been using art to speak to his ancestry. Like many in Newfoundland, the attempted assimilation of Mi'kmaq people and erasure of Mi'kmaq culture had a profound impact on him and his family.
There was so much that was lost. That, you know, my artwork for me became a means to learn about who I was, who my family is, who our people are here in this place. You know, I guess to a certain extent it still speaks to that, my artwork does.
Learning about our visual material culture, learning about tattooing helps to remember or helps to reconnect individuals back to their communities, homelands, back to their nations, and back to themselves.
The recent establishment of the Earthline Tattoo Collective in British Columbia presented Evans with a new opportunity.
I've always been interested to have my marks, the marks that I've been making in my artwork on my body, because, you know, I've always thought of it as like permanent regalia, you know, pride and in who you are and where you come from.
Following in the footsteps of friend and fellow Mi'kmaq artist Jordan Bennett, last summer Evans was selected as one of 6 Indigenous artists for the collective's tattoo training residency in Kelowna. Now he's inking friends in the basement of his home in St. John's, including people from Inuit, Mi'kmaq, and Métis communities. Today it's his friend, Stephen George, who already has a tattoo of his great-grandmother Teresa on his left arm, and on his right a tattoo of his great-grandfather, Tom George.
I wanted something to connect the two ancestors on either arm. And what Jerry's doing now is really, I'd call it Damgug, you know, which is Mi'kmaq for Newfoundland, land over the water.
Evans and George were both denied Indian status and membership under the Halibu Mi'kmaq Band. But they say status is not what defines them as Mi'kmaq people.
There was different things that, bureaucratic, administrative things that were going on that were quite beyond genealogy or any of the identity issues that make us who we are, you know, cultural things, a ceremonial thing. They can't be captured in a piece of paper you send to someone in government.
For Evans, the tattooing and its importance to him and others isn't something Canada can measure in defining Indigenous people.
It's part of not just me reclaiming something that was denied our family, but it's something that was denied here in this place for most of our people. And it's a way to reclaim our traditions, our power, you know, and I'm honored to have, you know, to be able to do this. You know, I'm doing this as with a purpose, you know, to help bring back our power.
Justin Brake, APTN National News, St. John's, Newfoundland.
Fans of the popular AMC series Fear the Walking Dead know him as Crazy Dog. And for Cree actor Justin Rain, the recent holidays not only offered a break from a crazy busy shooting schedule, they also gave him a chance to give back. APTN's Larissa Burnoff has more.
I'll keep the peace. Not at all costs.
He's recognizable on many popular television shows and even on the big screen. And like many of us, actor Justin Rain returns home for the holidays, but not only to visit family and friends. This holiday season, he spent several days visiting a handful of remote First Nations communities in his home province of Saskatchewan. This trip is not a new one for Rain. He makes it a point to return to northern Saskatchewan annually. He speaks openly to First Nations youth about the darker times in his life, nearly dying from drugs and alcohol at a young age.
That escalated to the point where I overdosed in my senior year of high school 3 times. Since then, I've been clean and sober. I've been clean and sober for about 17 years now. And, you know, I enjoy going to communities and sharing my story of inspiration about why I don't drink or use drugs. And
Rain says he believes talking openly about his journey can be used to help others.
You know, I've lost friends to suicide. On a few occasions, I seriously considered taking my own life. And I think it's important for us, you know, people in my position to visit and share our own personal insights and what we've discovered along the way, you know, to make it through.
Rain says the only way to move throughout life on a positive path is through creative expression.
I truly believe that every single one of us is an artist in some way, shape, or form. And if we stop creating, we will inevitably start destroying in other ways. A handful of various addictions and abuses.
Rain says when people abuse substances, they suppress who they are and where they come from, and it's a vicious cycle that nearly killed him. He says being creative and artistic in many ways has continued to lead him down a good path in life and has taken his career to new heights. Larissa Burnoff, APTN National News, Saskatoon.
Thank you very much.
We end the broadcast with a special treat, at least for those willing to brave the frigid conditions this new year. I'm talking about what you're seeing right here, the big supermoon. There's a better view of it. It was the first supermoon of the year, technically, nicknamed a wolf moon, and it arrived and lit up the sky on New Year's Eve. Our nearest celestial neighbor appeared 14% bigger, 30% brighter than normal. Now, you won't have to wait too long to see the next one. This January 31st, another supermoon will coincide with a total lunar eclipse. All right, that's it for this weekend recap edition of APTN National News. Be sure to tune in Monday for more Indigenous news. I'm Rick Harp. Have a good day.